All right, thank you for joining us. We're going to get started because we have a lot of information to give you guys. For those of us in the classroom and those of us joining online, thank you very much for coming out today. My name is Dan Barone. I work for the Stockton College Coastal Research Center. I'm also an academic partner with the NJDEP and FEMA Region 2, providing outreach to you folks here today and online. Before we get started, a representative from the New Jersey Association of Floodplain Managers would like to say a few words. Joe Ruggieri from the NJDEP.
Thanks, Dan. And like Dan said, I'm representing NJDEP, and I'm also representing NJDEP, so two of the sponsors of this event. I'd like to thank you all for coming today in person and the people that are online. NJDEP is a CCP partner with FEMA, so part of our CCP partnership, we've engaged Stockton College as one of our coastal outreach partners, and that's how we're putting on this workshop today. And the New Jersey Association of Floodplain Managers, a lot of you are, I'm sure, are aware of NJDEP, non-profit organization. Also sponsored this event. They provided the coffee for the attendees here today, and also some continuing education credits for CFM. So, and I also suggested that you guys go to the website. There's a lot of good information on NJDEP's website, and a lot of good opportunities for additional training and continuing education, and also opportunities to become CFM also. So I suggested that you guys look at that. So I'll turn it back over to Dan to continue the workshop, and I thank everybody for attending today.
Well, thanks a lot, Joe. Just before we get started, I want to obviously acknowledge our partners today. NJDEP, the RAMP team, the Risk Assessment Planning and Partners that have been doing a lot of coastal flood study work, and also FEMA Region 2. And also thank you to the Jacques Cousteau National Estuarine Research Reserve for allowing us to have this here today. Just to give you a quick overview of what we're going to be doing today, we're going to have two sessions with a 15-minute break in between. In the first session, Session A, which will be for about an hour, we're going to do an introduction to why we're here today, the updated data, and a background on the coastal flood study and Hurricane Sandy responses and updates. But also we want to go over understanding flood zones and what the different flood maps mean, and different actions that you can take to reduce flood risks. Part of this Session A, Tom Sung's going to be coming up and talking about the updated information that we have for you. So with that, let's get started. Now, the whole purpose of this is to provide information to you, municipal officials and staff, and key stakeholders within the coastal zone of New Jersey. And we want to do this regarding our post-Sandy efforts, understanding the updated coastal flood zone areas, which I'm sure you're all interested in, and reducing coastal flood risks. Now, that's the main goal here. We want to be able to mitigate risk so we reduce risk in the future. And finally, we want to go over the preliminary work maps that each town will be getting in the near future. And we want to be able to use these new flood risk tools that are becoming available as part of the risk map program. If you're aware of the map modernization project, this is kind of an extension of that, where FEMA will be providing multiple risk analysis tools for each town to convey risk to their constituents. Just to give a background on Hurricane Sandy. Hurricane Sandy made landfall, obviously, over Brigantine at 11:30 p.m. on October 29th, 2012. Packed about 70-knot winds, minimum pressure of 945 millibars, and the highest tide gauge reading in New Jersey at 801 feet above mean high water. And I'm sure a lot of you are aware, since you come from the coastal communities, about the damages that the storm had caused, extensive damages. So one of the things that we really need to look on in the future is reducing risk and improving resiliency to a lot of your communities. Holgate, where I'm from, here, looks like a blizzard went through the streets. All the dunes breached there, and there was quite a bit of devastation with the homes there. From my background, I'm a coastal geomorphologist, but I also specialize in geographic information systems. So one of the things that Stockton did immediately following Hurricane Sandy was to to survey all of the state's beaches at all of our 105 beach profile sites to see what happened before and after the storm. It worked out in our favor that we were in the middle of our fall survey when Hurricane Sandy hit, so we had a ton of data before the storm, actually a couple weeks before the storm. We were able to go out and do a rapid response to see where dunes failed, how much sand was lost, and quantify the amount of sand lost to all of our state's beaches. This map that my colleague Steve Howard did here is a normalized map showing the amount of places that had dune failure or likely dune failure, or places where dunes did not fail at all. So this gives us a really good idea of what types of dunes can withstand a major storm event and what impacts that has on coastal flood risk. As you can see here in Ocean County and Monmouth County, above the eye of the storm, tremendous amount of damage to the dune breaching and overland waves crossing overland and hitting properties. In Cape and Atlantic County, since the eye of the storm was north of there, was far less surge. So you did see some dune breaching in various typical hotspots that we're aware of. But actually in Cape May County, they actually showed gains of sand in some places. So what we were able to do is actually quantify the amount of sand lost to all of the state's beaches. And for a total of 14 million cubic yards were lost to the beaches that we were able to quantify based on all of our beach profile sites. And this map shows the actual bar, so wherever there was a gain, it shows that it goes seaward, and wherever there's a loss in sand volume shows landward. You can see a tremendous amount of loss in Monmouth County and Northern Ocean County here, where the inlet formed in Mantoloking. Just to give you a quick zoom in of what the actual beaches looked like before and after Sandy, which we were able to survey. Thankfully, we were allowed early access to a lot of these places that were shut off. This is Mantoloking. The information on this map here, this information here shows our beach dune vulnerability assessment, where we were trying to predict dune failure in the event of a 100-year storm event. And you can see in Mantoloking, and this here is our pre and post beach profile. So you can see we were able to validate our model based on Hurricane Sandy's impacts. So there was total overwash and breaching here. This is where the inlet forms. Actually, our profile locations between where there were two breaches in the island here. Ocean County, this is Webster Avenue, southern Beach Haven, just about around Holgate. You can see the complete dune breaching and loss, and we were able to quantify how much sand volume was here. You'll see in later slides that we actually have, or FEMA is providing a delineation for all the oceanfront communities, the primary frontal dune delineation, just to show you how big that footprint is as another tool for you to use to convey risk. Now I'm going to turn it over to Tom Sung. He's going to go over some of the information regarding the new preliminary work maps and FEMA updates. No problem.
Good morning, everyone. First, I'd like to thank Dan for inviting me to participate in this workshop. I really do appreciate any efforts to help Dan and his staff, and also to take advantage of any opportunity. My name is Thomas Song. I work at FEMA Region 2. I work in Mitigation Division. Many people don't understand what we do in mitigation. It's within the agency. And I tell them very simply that mitigation is in the business of taking FEMA out, getting them out of the hazard recovery business. In other words, the goal of mitigation is to create hazard-resilient communities so that they can better withstand these natural events, and so that there will be less need for the recovery, the response that happens after these events hit our communities. Now, this obviously will never succeed in completely eliminating the risks and the impacts from these natural events, but I feel like any step towards that goal, we can really help the individual, the block, the community, the county, the state. Any improvements that we could make will impact people in a very positive way in our communities. The first thing about mitigation and creating hazard resiliency is you need to know what your risk is. And so so we have events like this where we talk about the products that we produce, to explain what the risk is in your communities, and to help you inform your residents and make these decisions. Now, we want mitigation to be not only a way of governing, but a way of doing business in your community, so that any little incremental steps we can towards hazard resiliency can get us closer to helping our residents withstand these events. 14 months ago, Hurricane Sandy impacted our area. It had a devastating effect. There were many communities that were severely impacted, and so there were some residents, some structures that needed to be rebuilt. And those structures could not rely on that flood risk assessment that was available, or your old flood insurance rate maps, because some of them are 10, 20 years old and did not have a proper coastal analysis completed at that time. So FEMA created the ABFEs, the Advisory Base Flood Elevation Maps. And this was an interim product between what you have, your respective firm, again, which was outdated, and the new firms, which have yet to were not completed, were in the process. So this interim product was produced so that those residents, those people who needed to rebuild, could have a better understanding of what their true risk is, so that they can build to mitigate against that risk. I, along with a number of other teams from FEMA, spent months, and in fact it's probably still going on. We went up and down the communities to explain what the ABFEs were, to explain what we were talking about when we say best available data, and again, to promote mitigation. It's not just a strategy, but just a way of thinking, a way of doing business on a day-to-day basis. You see, we met with many local officials, elected officials, people like yourselves, emergency managers, to help them understand these products, to understand what their risk is, to give them an expectation of what is coming down the road, and then to help them communicate this to their residents. As I was saying, when people are rebuilding, those who needed to rebuild and rebuild immediately, they needed to get a more accurate assessment of what their risk is so that they can build towards it. Because if you build to the same standards that they had prior to the event, they're still at risk. And if this event ever occurred again, they would be impacted in the same way. And that is something that we all need to avoid, or at least promote to make sure that does not happen again. We are now past the ABFE stage, and we are at the preliminary work maps. These products that I'm talking about, Dan will explain in further detail in this workshop. But just to give you an idea that we are producing and delivering this data to you, to your residents, when it's available, so that you have an idea, a better idea of what your risk is. Here are examples of what a preliminary work map looks like in a preliminary firm. While you may not notice, it is somewhat nuanced, but when it comes to a flood insurance rate map, it is a regulatory product. It is the standard in which insurance rates are assessed, and therefore it needs to go through a regulatory process. And those steps are outlined within FEMA policy. Here is a timeline, and if you can see, we are now at that point where the preliminary work map release, we're in between the preliminary work map release and the preliminary firm release. Now, because again, it's a regulatory product, we go through a regulatory process. The region and FEMA decided to add on and not just do the basic minimum of just the delivery of this information, but we want to provide that support to the locals, to the communities, to the state, so that you have a better understanding of what it is that you're receiving, and how to use this information effectively. And again, we exchange ideas, and believe me, there are things that we learn that we might not have thought of while we were producing this product, and hopefully there are things that we can shed some light to you as local officials to pass this along to your residents. And I believe that you'll also go through the whole process, but again, this is just giving you a quick look on what this regulatory process or what to expect with the release of the new flood insurance rate maps. I believe that is the end of my piece. Thank you, Dan.
That all depends on what area of New Jersey we're talking about. Ocean County. March of next year, and again, we're trying our best to get this released as soon as we can, but it does go sort of weird heading off.
For those online, there was a question in the room when the prelim maps would be released, and Tom responded March of 2014 is the loose date from what I understand right now, right? Okay, thank you very much, Tom. What I'm going to talk about now is a little bit more in detail. If any of you are unaware of the different aspects of what a flood insurance rate map is and all the different pieces that go into creating these things. First thing that we talk about is what is a special flood hazard area. It's an area subject to flooding by the 1% annual chance storm event. And all insurance rates and building requirements are tied to these SFHA boundaries. All base flood elevations are established for these areas, and that's what you see on your flood insurance rate maps. And that's what the ABFEs had shown, and then preliminary work maps superseded that, and then the flood insurance rate maps, once adopted, will supersede those. And all those elevations are responded to the base flood of a 1% annual chance storm. All the different components of a flood insurance rate map, all the different zones, these are all the definitions. So you have your typical A zone without a base flood elevation, or subject to inundation in a 1% annual chance flood, but it's not going to actually give you that elevation of the base flood. Then you have your AE, which is a new A zone that actually can determine what your base flood elevation is from all the different surge modeling and overland wave analysis. I'm sorry, that would be the V zone. But then you have your AO zone, which used to be called the coastal A zone. This is an area subject to inundation by the 1% annual chance flood with an average wave depths of 1 to 3 feet. From what I understand with the new maps, there are some A zones in the new maps, but they respond to dune breaching and sheet flow over a dune. So in some of those areas in Ocean County, there are some AO zones. And then you have your V zones, which I'm sure most of you are familiar. These are areas subject to inundation by the 1% flood, but with storm waves above 3 feet. And then for your A zone and what I'll go into, what's called the LIMWA, the limit of moderate wave action, or your coastal A, those are zones that designate areas that have waves between 3 and 1.5 feet in height. To give you an idea of how this is modeled and how these zones actually are created, a lot of you have probably seen this before. So you have a shoreline and moving landward, you have your extent of your 3-foot wave, which is your V zone, including those properties. Maybe there's a primary frontal dune that breaches, maybe there isn't, and that V zone extends to where that wave height is reduced. A lot of this is calculated in a wave overland analysis using a model developed by FEMA called WAFIS, or Wave Height for Flood Insurance Studies. I can go into that in a little bit detail a little bit later. But once you actually get past the V zone, you have an AE zone, but an AE zone that has wave heights between 3 and 1.5 feet. And at that extent, that limit of 1.5 feet is what's called the limit of moderate wave action. Now, there's no regulatory there's no regulations or insurance implications for that A zone, but it is an area that could be a higher risk due to some wave activity. So FEMA sets the standard for risk. Now, local municipalities can adopt a higher standard to mitigate future risks. So, for instance, you may want to mitigate or adopt a higher flood standards for an AE zone with waves between 3 and 1.5 feet. And then past that, you have your typical AE zone, which is waves that are less than 1.5 feet. And then after that, you have your X zone, or your 500-year flood zone, which is outside of the insurance implications of the 1% chance flood. So this basically just reiterates what I said, but all of this is calculated using the storm surge stillwater elevation, the amount of waves set up, which I'll go into, wave height above the storm surge elevation, and yeah. One of the things that's changed on the new maps, the new flood insurance study, is the vertical datum. The vertical datum for the new maps has been updated to the North American vertical datum of 1988. All your effective maps right now are referenced to the NJDEP 29, or the National Geodetic Vertical Datum. And so with that, I can show you how to convert your old effective maps to what an NAVD88 elevation would be relative to that based on your location. It depends on your location. The shifts in the vertical datum will vary depending on where you're located. Just to give you an idea of what those different shifts in the vertical datums can mean for you, for instance, NAVD88 in Manhattan between NJDEP 29 and NAVD88 is 1.5 feet. So you can have a foot offset in certain cases between different datums. So just keep that in mind. So when you're looking at your effective maps compared to the newer flood insurance maps, they may be referencing different datums, so just be aware of that. Now I just want to take you to the Region 2 Coastal website and show you what the web viewer looks like. If you're not aware of the Region 2 Coastal website, please go to this website. It has a tremendous amount of information for local officials and policymakers because it has the most up-to-date information of the preliminary work maps for your community. And for all the coastal counties in New Jersey, all the preliminary work map data is available now. So it's my understanding that when the preliminary maps come out, they will be based on the preliminary work maps with a few tweaks here and there, but they will be pretty consistent with how they look. Trying to get stuck again. I apologize. The internet connection seems to be slowing a bit in here. There is quite a bit of information in this map tool. Who here has actually used this web map viewer? Everyone? Okay. If you haven't used this web map viewer, it's incredibly simple to use. When you zoom out, it actually shows you each county which has the preliminary work map data available. As you zoom in, it will actually show you the individual zones. So you can actually type in a individual property, and it will show you the actual zone for an individual address and location. I apologize, the internet seems to be slowing down a bit, but there are a few specific things that you should look at. In here, there's a content tab where you can click on individual layers. Now, let's say you have a question about why a V-zone was delineated in a certain area along a mainland community with a bulkhead elevation or something like that. You can actually turn on the individual transects where they did the overland wave analysis, and you can look at where that was done. It looks like it's back up. So all of this information also, if you're not aware, all of the information that's in this web viewer has been made available to all the local officials. So if you have a GIS analyst on staff or somebody, they can get all the GIS information and do their own analyses with the information that was done for the regulatory products that will be coming out. Go to that and fill it right back in. This is just a zoom in of what it looks like, an example. In the yellow shaded area, this is your AD zone, and it actually has different zones delineated within here, showing you different base flood elevation zones. This triangular area, which I'll go into, is the limit of moderate wave action. And actually in here, this looks like Surf City here, you can see the V zone on the base side stops at the bulkhead line. And then the V zone here, actually, the information that was used for this particular study, the beach replenishment project in Surf City had been done for flood analysis, so it included that really big dune within the overland wave analysis. So you can see the B zone stops at the primary frontal dune, and there's actually a 500-year flood zone directly landward of that. So that's just to keep in mind. These are the flood. The analysis was done based on a 2010 elevation surface for the storm surge and the overland wave analysis. This is actually a fantastic tool as well. If you haven't used this, you can actually direct the public to this website. They can find out what their base flood elevation is. The one caveat right now is that it can work with parcel information, but for some counties there's no building footprint information. So some counties and some GIS departments have actual building footprints for all the buildings in their communities. So what you can do is you actually tie that address to that location. You can type the address and it'll actually give you the actual outline of the building and the exact BFE. When you use a parcel, it's not as consistent because the polygon delineating a parcel as opposed to a structure can include different areas. But that will be updated from what I understand with building footprints for the what's my BFE. Is that right, Tolga? Okay. Okay. Great. Right.
Is that going to be continually updated? Because it is in flood zone, it's much construction. I mean, ship out of this on my block alone.
Yes. Yeah. Sorry. There was a question in the room for those online, how often will the building footprint information be updated? And the answer was the NJDEP is doing that update right now. But for newer buildings, it won't be updated because it's a one-shot deal. From what I understand, all the data collection for the building footprints is based on LiDAR information. So it's dependent on when the data were collected, not individual properties. So it's probably a regional assessment at one time. Yeah. Yeah. Correct. So that may be a situation where you contact NJDEP to update them on newer structures in your community. We'll have a group discussion in a moment. We're going to have a group discussion in a minute about this. I was going to go to give you an example of the Seabright, but since the internet connection's a little hindering right now, just to give you an idea, you can type in an address. We typed in the municipal building for Seabright, New Jersey, and it actually came up with the actual building footprint, and it gave us the base flood elevation at 7-foot NAVD 88 for that. So it's very simple to use. Just, again, go to the Region 2 Coastal website, and if you go to the Coastal Flood Study tab, there's a link to what's my BFE. Now we're going to get into the group discussion. What I'd like to do, if we can, is based on these topics, ask some questions. We have about, how long do we have? About 15 minutes? About 5 minutes for a group discussion. So we'll try to regulate it where we have one question in here, and then we'll try to address a question from someone online. And we'll try to make it as interactive as possible. It's getting pretty slow, but I think.
Online question.
Yeah.
The GIS layers from the website available to the public.
Yes. Okay. Yes, all the information in the web map is available. So if you have a GIS specialist in your town or someone who's just interested, all of these layers are available to you. Are there any other questions regarding base flood elevation determinations, the tools or the flood zone delineations? Any specific questions regarding that? Yes.
The elevation industry is where I'm involved. Interactive dismantling launch.
Yep.
All of our companies right now have 800,000 leads on elevation control. One of the big issues is very few have their elevation surveys at the point of contact with the industry, and so we're very dependent on trying to determine current ground elevation
out the structure, you can extrapolate how high the floor is, rezone or rezone, and then the base of the elevation is from. So on the FEMA Region 2, a portion of the coastline has a relative ground level from all the LiDAR shooting, but in the southern areas don't. And so then we're, how high is it going to go? We're having to shoot numbers out there. It's a very valuable tool to have that relative ground information coastline to coastline. We're a little handicapped in the southern counties right now.
Okay.
Without an elevation certificate. And of course, to go back further into the process without a design set of plans, it's hard to give them a final quote, but everybody wants that elevation quote in their early budgeting stages.
Okay.
So it's just the faster we can get that into ground level in the southern UCLA, it will be very valuable.
So that will be a part of the flood risk data set, Tolga, is that correct?
It depends on the quality of the LiDAR.
Yeah.
Look at better quality information, so that's why we could release that ground elevation. But it is an actual. Yeah, well, it's just all
Yeah.
You get an elevation certificate, not a plan. But again, you know, I'm working with companies that have multiple thousand leads, trying to manage and help these people put budgets together.
Right.
Projects built.
So there are countywide elevation models that you can use as a general elevation for a specific property. But I would, as you said, for budgeting, but for general purposes, for an elevation cert, you obviously always want to go out an elevation.
0 to 6 feet is basically the price per foot.
Okay.
Anything above that, they're above the got to stack timbers is an additional cost, and so it's very helpful if we can do that.
Okay.
So sooner than later.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. Any other questions at the moment?
I'll ask a question. I'm not sure this is where it needs to be asked, but in doing flood elevation certifications for real estate transactions on houses currently, you need to use the current information that is the adopted FEMA elevation. However, the purchaser, a buyer of a new house, eventually, 2 years from now, whenever the new house are going to have to rely on that for their flood insurance. It kind of puts them caught in the middle,
right?
And it puts us in a situation where what information we really want. We need to give them the information so that they can get flood insurance currently, but we really ought to be giving them the other information so they can make a decision. Are the maps going to change? And also the insurance companies and the mortgage companies right now are not accepting flood insurance or flood elevation certificates. They want a loan on everything.
Is that because of the new maps that are being issued?
They're confused. And so they say, well, that's great. You're a professional. You're signing this seal as a surveyor. You're signing this seal on this, but we're not sure if we really want to accept that. So, you know, we want to get from FEMA.
Told.
More and more of those requests. But keep up too.
Yeah. There was a question in the room regarding elevation certificates and insurance companies not accepting elevation certs because they're confused as to which maps to be using for insurance rates. Is that correct? Is that the question?
Yes, and also for the public itself.
Yeah.
I mean, are we misleading them because we need to give them a certificate based on the existing information because that's what the insurance companies have to rely on and even after adopted 2 years from now or 3 years from another.
Well,
they're going to impose their rates based on the new elevation.
That's true, but the elevation of the property would still be consistent.
Right, except for the fact that that's probably going to change because they're going to use on my certificate currently, I can match the existing map.
Tolga?
Right, so the elevation certificate, everything is based on the current effective flood insurance statement. Since ADSC, what we recommend to the surveyors is note that the ADSC elevation or the preliminary reference elevation on the notes section in the elevation certificate, just for awareness to the property owner, just that one. But everything, the insurance is based on the effective these maps, until they go effective, as we mentioned 2 years from now, it has no insurance implication. So the preliminary work maps you have right now will stay the same for the coastal area in the upcoming preliminary firms. And moving forward, if there are no appeals or changes, it will stay the same and go effective. So you can rely on the preliminary work maps, DEP and the zones for the coastal area. The only addition, the preliminary firms will be the riverine area. New tie-in, there are several streams that we are currently studying. Those will be added to the preliminary work map. That's the only change, only addition that you will see in the upcoming map. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. So to answer the question, if you're getting an elevation certificate, the surveyor doing the certificate should be noting the new preliminary work BSD on elevation cert, in addition to the effective BSD.
Just in case things do change in the future with when the new maps become effective. Okay. Is there any questions online, Steve? Okay. Any other questions, or we'll move on? All right. Now I'm just going to go over briefly what the risk map program is. The risk map program stands for Risk Map Assessment Planning. This is an addition to or builds on the map modernization project from the old standard paper maps to the digital maps. But what FEMA is doing now is that they're increasing the public awareness for risk, not just giving you the map and that's the end of it. But in addition to that, they're going to reduce the risk in life of property by creating, one, these regulatory products, which would be your flood insurance rate map, your flood insurance study. But also there's these, what they're calling the new non-regulatory products, which I'll go into. But the whole point of this is for hazard mitigation. So reducing your risk before the disaster occurs. So any action taken to reduce or eliminate long-term risk of life and property. And using the new risk map, it will help you identify mitigation actions when you update your hazard mitigation plan for your community. This is just outlining some of the new products that are coming out, which I'll go into detail. But what you're going to get is what's called a DFIRM database, which has several of these products. Not just your flood database. You're going to get you're going to get your DFIRM database with all of your regulatory zones and boundaries on it, but also you're going to get a flood risk database, which has several different things like a primary frontal dune or a depth grid, so you can actually see how deep the water would be during a 1% annual chance flood. And all of this information would go into your hazard mitigation plan for multi-jurisdictions. So the process works like this. So the risk map products and data sets help inform a hazard mitigation plan. And then you can add your other community plans like comprehensive development, stormwater management, emergency operations, sustainability or climate change adaptation. And all of this stuff goes into mitigation actions and plans. That's what it's all about, trying to reduce your risk in the future. That's why FEMA says they're setting the baseline. So just the standard, but the state and the individual towns can adopt higher standards for reducing risk in the future and identifying mitigation actions for the future. So with that, all the different mitigation actions that you can do are structure and infrastructure projects, which there's a lot of that going on right now. You know, a lot of homes being raised, fixing a lot of infrastructure, electric, stormwater outfalls, things like that. But local plans and regulations, I know there's some communities that are maybe adopting higher, stricter standards for areas within the LIMWA, but you can also adopt freeboard above your base flood elevation for new structures. There's also community-identified programs that can be implemented. Storm Ready, Firewise, but there's also the community rating system. If your community's not a part of that, what that does is if you're part of CRS, you can basically lower your town's flood insurance rates by a certain percentage based on your ranking of different things that you do to reduce your risk in your community. But you can also do natural system protection, stream and wetland restoration, and different erosion control options like beach replenishment.
And the whole point of this is to communicate risk. You know, once people are educated on what their risks are, they can begin to take action. So the federal, state, and local goals are creating safe communities to reduce risk and effectively communicating that risk. But the key factor is contributing to successful achievement of these goals. But we really need to engage our communities and exchange information. So if you have a question, you should be able to come to us or different individuals to answer any of your questions. So I will stress that if you have any questions following this, we are, as outreach partners, are always available to help you, guide you in the right direction. If you have questions in the future regarding data sets, how something was done, elevations, datums, anything like that, you can contact us as Coastal Outreach Partners. So feel free to contact me or anyone here. Steve Howard, Kim McKenna, we're here working with the state and FEMA Region 2 to help all of you guys out. Again, the FEMA Region 2 Coastal.com website has been an excellent tool for communicating risk. They've been also hanging a lot of the links that we've been doing a lot of these webinars. This is the second series of a workshop that we've done. We gave our last one back in January. So all of the information and tools that we've been giving have been available on this website. All the outreach fact sheets, frequently asked questions, educational videos, and all the best available data. Now, the beauty of all the information being in that web map viewer is that when something gets updated or community has a question about a bulkhead elevation to supply new information to Region 2, they can update it on the web. So you can go back and see what's been updated, which is actually fantastic as opposed to just a plain old paper map that you get. It's dynamic in that sense. But also, one of the things that I'm going to be talking about in detail is the non-regulatory products. That's going to be one of the most important things for individual towns to use for different town meetings, for mitigation actions, to identifying areas that may get flooded, even in a 5-year storm event on something that's pretty regular. It has something to do with stormwater management or bulkhead elevations or something like that. That's something that you should be able to look into using this information. Now, what a flood insurance rate map does, it's a map of the community. And it delineates all the special flood hazard areas, all the base flood elevations associated with that, and areas where wave action could impact structures like a V-zone, and basically your overall floodplain boundaries. To reduce your coastal flood risk, the residential and non-residential criteria, there's NFIP standards and requirements. These are the base standards. Again, in your town, you can adopt stricter standards. Now, community rating system, there are some communities that do partake in this, and you can reduce your risk by simply, there's several different methods for doing this. I'm not a CRS expert, so I would contact the CRS coordinator for the state regarding that. But there's several mitigation actions that you can document, elevation certificates, things like that, that you can supply. Okay, we're going to have one more group discussion with everyone in here and everyone online, just to go over everything that we've talked about in this session. And basically the questions we want to ask, or you need to ask us so we can help answer all of your questions is your community a flood risk area? I'm willing to bet that everyone in this room has a flood risk, special flood hazard area in their community. And what are the common map flood hazard zones in your community, and what are the questions regarding those delineations? So if anyone has a question in this room regarding that, please ask right now, or if is there anything online? At the moment?
What was answered is risk bank products are available on Region 2 Coastal.com.
Good questions. All right. Let's move on. Yeah, nailed it. All right, with that, we're going to take a quick break. One question?
You mentioned 1% annual storm, and this refers to 100-year flood, correct? Are you looking on 10-year flood?
Now, the products, the non-regulatory products, the sturge layers, they do have in GIS format storm surge water surface elevation grids that represent for a 10-year flood, a 50-year, and 100 and 500-year event. So all those are GIS layers that you'll be able to access and do analysis to look at increased risk from increased storm recurrence intervals within your entire town. So yes, still water. It's not including wave heights or anything like that. Now, all the wave height information, that information is also available. Is that correct? For each individual town, and all the modeling that was done by the ramp team is available to each individual town. All the individual transects where they map the wave heights and all that stuff.
And just as a note, all the wave heights are just on the 1% annual change.
Yes.
We haven't developed wave heights on any of the other recurrence intervals yet. And we are, what we may, we're hoping to develop until 500 years.
Joe Ruggieri just answered a question regarding the wave heights. He just wanted to note that all the wave height information is only for the 1% chance storm, not for the 500-year event. Okay. With that, I think we'll take a 15-minute break, and then we'll reconvene and start session A. All right. Thank you. Everyone online, please just hang tight.